We appreciate you being here. My name is Penny Miller-Nelson. I'm the superintendent of Midland Public Schools. And again, thank you for joining us for this community information session. I wanted, before we start, just share a couple logistics so that you can be this throughout the night. You do see a QR code on your screen. And if you choose to use that QR code, it will take you to a Google form where you can ask us questions, which will be shared during the Q&A session. There are also index cards available, and if you need one at any time in the evening, just raise your hand and we'll have a member of our team get you a card. You can write your question on here and we will use that again at the end of the evening. Our commitment is to staying and providing an opportunity for questions to be asked and for us to offer you responses. It is important, however, that we use some time tonight to share information, hence the community information part of this. There is a lot of important details in this facilities improvement bond proposal. We want to make sure that you have that information and understand it. So thanks for being here. There are some folks I'd like to introduce. We're really fortunate to have several of our board members here with us this evening, and they will be joining in part of our experience this evening. First is Phil Rausch, our board president. Next to him is Scott McFarland, vice president of our board. We have Jen Ringgold up in the back, who serves as our secretary. I don't think John Lauterbach is here yet. Oh, John is here. John Lauterbach, our treasurer. Hi, John. Sorry I missed you. And we have Mecky Craig, a trustee. So we have 5 of our board members here this evening to listen and engage with you, and I know that they'll make themselves available at the end of the evening as well if you have comments or questions for them. I'd like to invite, before we get started, I'd like to invite Vice President Scott McFarland to offer some opening comments, and then we'll move into the presentation. I think it's on.
Oh, great. Okay. All right. Thank you, Penny. Good evening, everybody. It's great to see so many of you here tonight. To me, that means that you love this community and this district as much as I do. Welcome. I appreciate you and thank you for spending time with us. I don't have a long formal speech or a whole lot to say. I'm not here to tell you how to vote, but a yes vote would be nice. I'm here tonight to ask you to listen. Listen closely to this presentation. I'm sure many of you have seen it, some probably more than once. Listen to the facts closely. Listen to the information. Take it all in. I want you to understand the scope of this project and the needs of our district. Details matter. We have a little bit of a telephone game situation going on in our community. Everybody remembers the game we played in first grade where we sit in a circle and a story starts on one end and goes all the way around and is completely different on the other. And a couple examples that I'm seeing of that, this bond project is $285 million. So I've seen on several different formats that it's now up to $400 million and counting. I've been approached in the community a handful of times by people who are still under the assumption that we're going to move forward with a unified district building a single high school. None of that is true. That's why it's important to understand what's really going on here. Understanding the facts helps stop the rumor mill, and it makes you an informed voter. When this presentation is done, I want you all to ask questions. Ask away, as many as you want. Penny told you a minute ago how the question format is going to work. Simply raise your card and someone will come and pick that up, or use the QR code and the questions are going to be read aloud and the administrative team is going to answer them. Officially, the way that this meeting is going to go is it's going to be about an hour, and I'm taking up some of your time, and I know that and I appreciate it. When the presentation is done, and it may be an abbreviated version, we'll open it up to questions. And at an hour mark, it'll officially be done, but I can tell you that I will stay here along with our team, and we're going to answer questions as long as it takes. Okay, so don't feel like you're rushed out the door, that you didn't get a chance to educate yourself and to ask a question. We want you to do that. All of that being said, I appreciate all of you that are here. Thank you for spending time. Thank you for making the effort to be here tonight. And I'm going to turn it over to Penny now so we can move forward with why we're really here, and that's learning about this bond. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. So let us begin with just a quick reminder of our journey and how we got to this moment with this particular facilities improvement bond proposal. You might remember from previous information sessions and communications that our district engaged in a very thorough facility assessment nearly 2 years ago. That assessment included building principals, athletic director, department leads, administration from central office, along with independent third-party facility experts who know about schools. They walked all of our school buildings and support buildings and really took a status check of the condition of those schools and what it is we need to maintain and move forward with the most vibrant, healthy learning environments. That data was collected and analyzed by our administration team. It was studied by our board study committees. From that moment, as Scott shared, there were a couple of ideas, concepts shared with our community, and we received robust input. You might remember receiving a postcard that was sent to every community member. You might remember focus groups that we held and a community-wide survey that was shared. All of that input was used by the Board of Education along with that facility assessment data to get us where we are today with this particular facilities improvement bond proposal. The board then approved our bond application, which was sent to the Department of Treasury, and that was approved. And that is important for you to know. That approval process means that our state officials scrutinize that document both for the financial plan that we're using, as well as the actual work to be completed. We are now in the phase where the board called for election, so this proposal will be on the May 6th ballot, and now we are working really hard to make sure that our community understands the factual information of this improvement proposal, and that we can, as Scott said, ensure that our voters are informed. I want to take one more, maybe two more moments to really set the stage. There are some current trends and conditions that our community, our school community, is facing, which really situates us for this particular bond program. And the first is aging facilities. The average age of our school buildings is 64 years old, and that includes our newest build of Central Park Elementary. Our facilities are aging. We have two in particular that are near end of useful life. That is Carpenter Street Elementary, home of our pre-primary center, along with Northeast Middle School. We'll hear more about that later this evening. The second trend that we're facing is universal preschool, preschool for all. We're really excited about this opportunity to expand offerings of preschool. Research is really clear that that strong foundation in the early years sets students up for success both academically and socially, and we want to be ready to maximize those opportunities. The third trend or condition that we're facing is enrollment, and we are so fortunate that our student enrollment is stable, actually predicted to increase just a bit in the coming years. And that is a bit of an anomaly from across the state, where other schools are experiencing declines. We attribute that to the excellent opportunities that we offer, our outstanding teachers and support staff, and that we still are a destination district where families choose to live and send their children to school. However, we're experiencing a bit of a shift in that population. It's moving more to the north of US 10. So north of US 10, we have 600 elementary age students, and when you add middle school and high school, we have about 1,500 students who reside north of US 10. Those elementary students are primarily zoned into the elementary schools of Woodcrest and Siebert and Adams. Those schools are full. In fact, all of our elementary schools are full. We do not have an open classroom in any of our elementaries. In fact, We have teachers teaching from a cart rather than a dedicated classroom. We have spaces that were designed to be STEM maker spaces, robust collaborative learning spaces, and we've had to use those now as classrooms rather than a shared learning space. We also are out of room for our special education partnership with the Midland County ESA. We really value this partnership where they provide the staff, the expert teachers and support staff, to educate students who have special needs in our schools. And each year, they're asking for additional classroom space, and we're out. So this is putting us in a position where more teachers need to be teaching from a cart. We have to have more interventions in hallways. We have to deliver more specialized services to students in makeshift spaces. So space utilization, I led right into that one, is our fourth factor or condition. And finally, academic excellence. We want to maintain and continue advancing the exceptional experiences that we provide for students academically, as well as in arts, athletic, music, play. Those are really important to create that well-rounded experience for students. You might know that when students reach 11th grade and take their SAT score, Dow High, Midland High together, our scores place us in the top 3% of achieving districts across the state. We want to maintain and even advance that standing for our students and our families in our community. The board again took all of that information, the facility assessment, the community input, these current conditions we're facing. They thought deeply about the importance of creating the most inclusive learning environments for all of our children. They thought about who we want to be as a school community, and they placed this bond program for our community organized into these 5 focus areas. I'll invite Brian Brutin, and I'm so sorry I didn't introduce the two of you. Let me just pause for a moment. Pardon me. Brian Brutin is our assistant superintendent. We also have with us Anna Womack, who is our Associate Superintendent of Facilities, Finance, and Operations, and they will be co-presenting with me this evening. Brian's going to take us through these next several slides, explaining the work in these 5 focus areas.
Thanks, Penny. Appreciate it. And thank you, everyone. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with all of you this evening. I see some familiar faces that I know I've talked with before. I see some new faces as well. And again, I'm blessed to be able to share this opportunity. As Penny said, we have focused in on this bond program. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. I speak loud anyway, so I didn't quite get that through. In this bond area on 5 separate focus areas. And I'm going to try and detail out in these focus areas what our main priorities were that were identified when we spent over 2 years within our committees trying to narrow in on what the essentials are for us to maximize student safety, student achievement, and also optimizing the usage within our facilities. The number 1 priority for the Midland Public Schools each and every single day is student safety. It is at the top of our priority list. We take it ridiculously seriously, and it was the number 1 factor that we attributed into our 2015 bond. In 2015, we focused on secure entrances. We also focused on putting security cameras throughout all of our campuses. Technology moves fast, and as we have progressed from 2015 now up until 2025, some of the technology that we have put into place has aged a touch. The cameras that we've installed in 2015 now have artificial intelligence installed upon them for modern weapons detection. That weapons detection requires certain pixels and certain refinement of those camera lenses to us to be able to enhance the security measures that we have in place. We're looking at taking those camera systems and video surveillance systems and bringing them up to 2025 standards. In addition, it's important for us to modernize our alert systems. Within our buildings, all of us experienced when we were in school tornado drills, fire drills. Modern alert systems also now include the ability for us to be able to lock down our schools and to be able to indicate, not just through auditory cues, but also visual cues, different status of safety measures such as lockdown, secure mode. There is advanced technology that could optimize our ability to secure our buildings in a quick fashion and also enhance evacuation if need be. In addition, modern trends and studies have indicated that safety glass, the more that you can put within the building, the better off it is that you are. In an emergency situation, it's about seconds. It's about minutes. It's about the time that you can delay the bad guy from doing bad things. And if you can install safety glass that will delay people that are trying to do bad things, it allows our first responders those extra essential seconds in which they can be able to respond to our schools. We have an amazing partnership with the Midland Police Department. We've worked with them on what security enhancements we have, and if we can install additional safety glass, better alert systems, and enhance our camera systems, we believe that will even better position where we are with our modern safety preparations. As we move into pre-K, Penny told a story about universal preschool and its emergence within the Midland Public Schools. I'd like to enhance this just a touch with a brief history of where we have been in Midland Public Schools and where we are now. 8 to 9 years ago was the very first venture that we had in the Midland Public Schools in pre-K programming. We started with one program, and that was at Adams Elementary, and we served 16 students. From that period where we started with one program at Adams to today, we are now serving not 16, but over 150 students at the Carpenter Pre-Primary Center. That continues to expand every year, not just with 4-year-old programming, but also with 3-year-old programming and also with young 5s programs as well too. The ability for us to be able to serve 4-year-old students enhances educational outcomes in the future and also allows our teachers to be able to intervene and strategize to provide the best educational outcomes that we possibly can. That has provided challenges for us in Midland Public though. Those students are currently housed in the Carpenter Pre-Primary Center, which was scheduled and was closed during the 2015 bond. At that time, our facilities experts told us that that building was at end of life. We closed the building and took it offline. But the rapid expansion and opportunity for preschool programmings necessitated that we reopen that building, put a little bit of money into it to be able to make that space usable for our youngest students, and then it caused us to be able to expand those opportunities and also utilize the opposite side of that building for our robotics programs, and we'll get to that in a bit later in the presentation. Now, I tell you the story about us starting at Adams for a reason. When we had the program at Adams, we quickly expanded the next year to Plymouth. Then we outgrew those facilities because of the other needs. We moved over to Carpenter, and parent feedback was voluminous. The feedback was strong that parents did not like that the programs were taken out of primary elementaries and moved off campus for a couple of reasons. Reason number one, transitions are hard for our youngest learners. When you are in one building for a year, get used to the routines, and quickly the next year move to another, it's hard on our youngest learners. Number two, most of our students have siblings. For those of you that have experienced our car drop-off lines, we understand that if you have to drop off a student at Carpenter, and then they have a sibling who may be at Adams, and they have a sibling who then may be at Northeast, it provides challenges. Those transitions are tough for parents, and they're also tough for students. And probably most important, those transitions are also tough on us and able to communicate amongst our teaching staff and provide the support services for those students in the maximized, most efficient way. When the preschool teacher is in a separate building than will be the kindergarten teacher, those communication channels are difficult. In addition, when you only have a population of around 150 students in a building, it's difficult for us as a district to be able to provide the robust wraparound services that we are blessed to have in our other elementaries. Services such as literacy intervention specialists, student support specialists, all of the wonderful things and interventions that we have for students. If we could have those students in our primary elementaries, it would be a blessing for us to be able to enhance the outcomes for those students. Modernizing educational program space is probably the second most important part of this bond beyond safety. Our classroom spaces. During the 2015 bond, the largest part of our renovations happened in our elementary schools. In our secondary schools, for those of you that may have attended Northeast or Jefferson or Midland High, those classroom spaces look very, very similar to how they did when you were attending those classes. In addition, you may, if you put your name on a desk and etched it in pen, see the exact same desk. They're sturdy, they're still there, but they are not modern. And that modern furniture allows us to be flexible and to abandon traditional education settings. Yes, you and I may have been in horizontal and vertical perfect rows, which is great for people with obsessive compulsive disorder, but it is not great for modern educational learning. Flexible furniture that will allow to grouping students, to moving students independently when they need to, putting them together to work on projects when they need to as well. Modern educational furniture enhances learning outcomes. It's time for us to renovate these spaces. In addition, there's in some classrooms still accordion walls in between. Embarrassingly, there's even carpet on some walls as well too. These are items that we need to address and bring those spaces up to modern expectations. We cannot abandon and look away from what is also happening in CTE. CTE, for those of you that don't know that acronym, is Career and Technical Education. At Dow High, we have a great auto program. At Midland High, we have a phenomenal welding program. Those shops and those labs were built decades ago. They were built in a fashion that met the needs at that time, and what those spaces dictate now in terms of modern training and technology, they are not designed for that. The programs that we have in those spaces can greatly benefit from enhanced dollars and renovations to be able to modernize that experience for them. In addition, Penny talked about providing additional learning spaces for students with special needs. I'm going to spend a minute on this one as well too. We do service here in Midland Public a large population of students that have disabilities. We partner with the Midland County ESA in order to do this. As Scott said, let's bust a couple of myths for us. These are not students that live outside of Midland Public Schools. These are resident students within the Midland Public Schools. They live here. They are Midland Public students, but because of their disabilities are being serviced by the ESA. For them to be able to maximize their educational achievement and outcomes, being placed in a primary elementary school versus an exterior building is essential to their learning outcomes. It allows them access to arts classes, to music classes, to physical education classes, to the ability to get into the general education courses when it's appropriate as well too. It's good for their learning, it's good for all students and outcomes. When the ESA comes to us year after year after year and they ask us for additional space, the answer is automatically yes. It's the right thing to do for us to be able to serve these learners. But do know there's an opportunity cost when we do it. When they come to us and say, we need an additional room and it needs to be at Siebert, Penny was not lying. She's a truthful person. We do not have additional classroom space at Siebert. So when we say yes to them, it forces us to make decisions that we don't want to have to make, meaning we may have to condense a section and increase class sizes. It's not something that we want to do, but it's the right thing to do to be able to provide the best maximized learning outcomes for our most needy learners. If we had additional space, it wouldn't allow us to have to make those difficult decisions every single year. Jefferson Middle School, I know there's a bullet there, and I want to touch out of order. I'm going to come back to that when we get to talking about renovating Northeast and the impact that that's going to have on Jefferson Middle School as well too. Arts, athletics, and elementary play areas. For those of you that have students at our elementaries, we run into challenging times. Those challenging times come at recess, especially about mid to late March. The snow melts and the drainage at our elementary playgrounds is poor. Those of you that have gone through loads and loads of laundry and had muddy boots understand the challenges that come with that. And we have designs in those playgrounds that do not meet modern educational needs. For us to fix that the right way, it does not mean more mulch, it does not mean more gravel. That is not modern educational play areas. It's installing drain tile, and it's also installing surfaces that allow accessibility to our play areas that also can be accessible for students with special needs. Our band and our arts programs. We have amazing, amazing arts programs. Those of you may have seen performances on this very stage that we're standing on that are absolutely incredible. Those of you that have had students in our band programs understand that when you show up to a school and you don't have an instrument, We do have a loaner and rental program. You may have been a recipient of those loan or those rentals, and you will have noticed that the instruments are aged. In some cases, we have instruments that are 40 and 50 and even 60 years old. It's time for us to be able, through this bond, to refresh that instrument fleet so that our performers have the best equipment possible to be able to thrive even more than they are now. That's not just about their equipment, but also their spaces as well, too. It's time for us to modernize some of our very tired spaces for our music programs. The Northeast Music Room, we'll talk about how that renovation will be advantageous. The Dow High and Midland High music rooms also could use a bit of a facelift as well, too. Our athletic facilities, this is a big piece, but I'm only going to spend about 2 minutes here. Yes, we do have a beautiful Midland Community Stadium. There are some enhancements at that stadium that will be beneficial for our users, that include our athletes, but also you all as well, too. In very brief, at the stadium, the next phase for us to be able to enhance that experience is to tackle the restrooms and the concessions experience. Those of you that have been to the Dow High Midland High game know that at halftime it becomes difficult to get popcorn. It also becomes difficult to answer the call of nature. For us to do this the right way, and for us to modernize that space and to bring this up to code, that includes us enhancing that, and modern code means not 4 stalls per gender, it means dozens and dozens and dozens. This will take a large capital investment. Let's not focus just on the stadium, but also our other secondary schools. Our middle school athletic facilities are lacking and need enhanced. For those of you that may have been to Jefferson, has anyone out there ever been on the Jefferson track before? Raise your hand. Okay. It's not really a track. If you've gone around 4 times, congratulations, and it's more than a mile. Why, I don't know. But you've also dodged the tree that's in the middle of that as well, too. If you've been on that field, the orientation of that field puts the sun in your eyes. They were designed in a time long ago. It needs enhanced. We can do better than cinders for a track and with trees for a track. The same is true at Northeast, and the same is also true behind Dow High. We've been blessed as a community to have donors that have helped us at Dow High to put a turf field in, to put lights back there as well, too. But for those of you that are parents of Chargers and have experienced the facilities behind Dow High, there is not parking. There is a dirt road that leads back behind it. We all know, because we live in Midland, that that area is a bit wet. And so when it rains, sometimes we'll lose our softball and baseball fields for over a week because the drainage is poor back there. We can do better for our athletes and put in modern facilities behind Dow High to be able to allow for enhancements to their experience, not just for the players, but also the visitors. We can do better behind Dow High for our athletic experience than Porta-Johns. It's time for us to put the plumbing in, to put concessions, to put restrooms for the visitor experiences too. Know that whatever we do at Dow High, we would also do at Midland High as well, so there would be enhancements to both. We have to address aging facilities. This is the part where people get bored. Hang with me here, my slides are almost done. This is not the part that people see. But for folks like Anna behind the scenes that have to crunch the numbers and make this happen, this is important. We have 2 facilities in Midland Public Schools, and only 2 that are not ENERGY STAR rated. It will not surprise you that those 2 facilities are the Carpenter Pre-Primary Center and Northeast Middle School. Northeast Middle School, it was only about 5 or 6 years ago that we installed air conditioning into that building. The actual HVAC system over there would not allow us to do this in a central fashion. They're mini splits. For those of you that understand HVAC and mini splits, it's not cost efficient. Carpenter, for those of you that have been in that building, it's nostalgic. There are still fireplaces in some of the rooms. That tells you what that building was designed for at that time. Yes, that provides some quaint nostalgia, but that does not allow us to put modern HVAC system in, hence why we have to address it. Roofs are also something that really, really cause us issues in schools. Flat roofs are challenging, team. They just simply are, especially these times of year where we have these frost freeze cycles that causes the materials to expand and contract. By 2026 in Midland Public Schools, over half of our roofs are going to be over 20 years old. At 20 years, that's the magical time where warranties start to expire. Roofs and roofing sections for schools cost millions and millions and millions of dollars. And the reason that this is important, those roofs will need replaced. We will not allow our students to have water that is dripping through and ruining their educational experience. When they need replaced, if we do not have a bond to be able to address this, that means we have to take those dollars from the general fund. We don't want to take dollars out of the classroom to address capital improvement needs. On to constructing new elementary and new middle school facilities. As Penny alluded to you, addressing the aging facilities and addressing the space needs. Let's talk first about the right-hand side of this. Northeast Middle School has reached end of useful life according to our facility experts. In short, what that means for us is we have done analysis, and the opportunity cost of investing now to renovate versus building new will end up costing the district and the taxpayers more money when you look at this on a 20 to 30 year trajectory. If you really like numbers and you like geeking out about those things, Anna and I will sit down with you and we're happy to go through those slides, but know that we've looked at this and we've crunched these numbers to be able to analyze those opportunity costs. There will be in this bond campaign and bond initiative a new middle school that is built on the current site where Northeast is now. It's a big piece of property. Think where the current football field is, where one of the baseball fields are. New Northeast Middle School gets built there, while the old Northeast Middle School continues to serve students. When the building is ready, the ribbon is cut, students will march across, and then we'll demo the old Northeast. Also a part of this will be the construction of a new elementary school. That new elementary school will be located somewhere north of US 10. As Penny pointed out to you, over 600 students live north of US 10. For us, it's important to address all of the space needs that Penny had talked about, but also important for us to be able to improve the student experience, to reduce bus ride times. Strategic location of this and also addressing some of the boundary issues that we have will allow us to enhance that time for students and provide greater efficiencies in getting students to and from school. In terms of utilization within our buildings, the experts tell us that 85% is our target mark. 85% allows you not to have the overcrowding issues that Penny talked about, where interventions are happening in hallways, where auxiliaries such as math and art and world language are happening on carts, and it allows you the ability to add extra special needs classrooms if you need to. You could see at our elementary schools when you're looking at the bottom portion of this, all are above 85%. Some of them are above 100%. When you get above 85, you start to feel crowded. If you've been in some of our elementary schools recently, if you walk into Siebert, if you walk into Woodcrest, you will feel it. We hear this all the time. Katie Geyer is here, our Director of Communication, monitors social media. We hear about traffic congestion. We understand. Building an additional elementary school can also help alleviate some of that congestion as well too by smoothing out our population distribution amongst our learners. We don't have a specific location for the elementary identified yet. We have explored additional avenues and additional options in which to be able to do this. Know that we have started working some of those channels, but it would be a bit premature for us to be able to go and actual purchase land when we haven't had a successful bond initiative, but know that we've done some proof of concept on this. Buildings coming offline will be the Carpenter Pre-Primary Center. Again, this is the second offlining of Carpenter. We did this once before in 2015. Carpenter will be taken offline if this bond proposal is successful, and we will take our preschool classrooms, put them back out into our neighborhood schools for all of the reasons I talked about before when we were talking about our earliest learners. And Northeast Middle School will also come offline as well, but again, same campus, new building, just different location within that campus. In terms of timeline, I know people are taking pictures of this right now. Know that this can be a touch fluid if it needs to be based on adjustments, but just for context. Bonds and the way that they work are complicated, and again, if this is your wheelhouse and you'd like to discuss it, I would love to have that conversation with you. But if a bond initiative passes, we don't just get a check for $285 million that's handed to us. There's financing, there's interest, there's things that go along with all of that. Because of that, we sell the bond in different series. Because you get the money over time spaced out, the amount of projects that you can do also have to be spaced out as well too. For us, the number one priority in this is to get the new elementary school built. We need to do that to alleviate the space issues, to be able to reduce class sizes, to be able to enhance our students with disabilities programming spaces as well too. So you'll see the design of that will start at the earlier part of this bond. So we are hoping that the new elementary school opens in the 27-30 timeframe, As you look and progress along that, at that time, the design of the middle school will also start, and we're looking to open the new middle school in the 2033 timeframe. As you survey the rest of this, you'll see that number one priority for us is safety and security. That happens first, and we'll start tackling some of the other projects such as enhancements to the playground, athletics, play facilities, tech infrastructure, et cetera, along the way as well too. I'm going to hand this over to Anna now. She'll talk a little bit about the finances.
Thank you, Brian. So looking at our $285 million budget, we want to show you where that budget is going. So our largest area is that new construction of that new elementary, that new middle school, that 54% of the entire budget, coming out at a little over $154 million. Our next biggest section is education improvements at 26%. That's those CTE renovations, the upgrades to the band and orchestra instruments, playground updates, the athletic improvements. Within those two sections right there, you have 71% of, sorry, my math's not right there. Anyways, majority right there is impacting students directly. Between those new buildings, between those education improvements, it's direct impact to students right off the bat. Looking in our other areas, we have infrastructure. Those are the HVAC, the roofs that Brian talked about, technology equipment, updating our network infrastructure to be able to support those one-to-one devices we have for our students, as well as staff devices. In our furniture replacement and equipment, Brian discussed about the needs for more modern furniture to get out of those horizontal and vertical rows. This allows us to replace that and get that flexible furniture within there. We also have bus replacement in here to make sure that we continue to move along our fleet and that we have the best available for our students. Looking at the ballot language, there is some confusion out in the community right now. The actual language that you will see does talk about a 3.9 mils within there. In all of our information, we keep on talking about a 3.25 mil increase. And this is our chance to try to explain those two numbers and how those work together. When we're looking at our mills of adding a 3.25 mil increase, that is adding on to the 2.95 we do currently have out there from the 2015 bonds. Together, they make 6.2. As time goes on with those 2015 bonds, the amount of those mills that are going in are able to start shifting some to the 2025, allowing that 6.2 to be a little bit fluid. Going from the 2.9, 3.25, it starts shifting. Much like within your mortgage, as you're going on and you start to pay down, less is going to interest, more is going to your principal. It's kind of a similar concept within bonds. So we were able to take that 6.2 total, start shifting a little bit from that 2.95 that you're currently seeing from the 2015 to the 3.25 to be able to come up with the entire amount that is needed for our 2025 bond. Looking at what this means as a community investment, we are looking at the 3.25 mil increase, and this chart is hopefully able to help you look at what your personal investment would be. Looking at $100,000 of home market value equates to roughly $50,000 worth of taxable value. At that, you're seeing about $162.50 yearly cost, which breaks down to a little over $13 a month. Most of the homes in this community are in between that $200,000 to $300,000 price range. Looking at that, you're coming down to $27 to about $41 a month, roughly averaging about $1 a day. Looking at how we compare within Midland County, we are currently at the bottom for millages that we are collecting amongst the 4 districts within Midland County. Even with adding this 3.25 mil increase, that still brings us in the lower half, just above Coleman at their current 4.45. As we look further throughout the state, we do have a group of schools that we tend to compare ourselves to. Looking throughout here, we are at the very bottom right now at our 2.95. Even adding in the 3.25, which would bring us up to the 6.2, it still places us in the bottom third of these districts. We hear frequently from our parents that are going out through other districts and other communities of why our facilities don't look like the ones at Rockford, the ones at Grand Blanc, the ones in West Bloomfield. Well, this is part of our answer for that. We right now are collecting at a 2.95 when these districts have been collecting for decades at the 8.6s, the 7.4s. They've been bringing in the funds to be able to do those facility upgrades that we just have not had the opportunity to do so. And I'm going to turn back over to Penny now for next steps.
Thanks, Anna. In the spirit of how we started with some myth busting, before we move into Q&A, I want to share a couple of additional comments. In that data collection phase and community input phase that I shared at the top of our presentation, there were several entities, several student groups, community user groups who expressed to us their desire for deeply renovated space or new space. And those were our aquatics committee, our swim teams, and friends who use our pools. It was our theater and music folks who really value and love this facility we're in now, but recognize that there are key performances throughout the year where this just isn't adequate space. And the third group was our robotics teams, and we're really proud of all three of those groups and the students who are involved in those. However, as the board really worked to understand the information, to understand how to put this facilities improvement bond program together in a fashion that could come to the community and hopefully garner support, they had to make some tough decisions about what could be included and what wouldn't. So I want to assure you, in case you're hearing in the community that we've forgotten about those three additional groups, that is not true. We are actively pursuing a solution for our robotics teams and identifying space in our community. We are actively engaged in conversations with the Midland Center for the Arts about the opportunity to rent space from them for some of those key performances. And we are actively engaged in our aquatics community. There is a committee that involves Midland Public, the City of Midland, as well as Greater Midland, the community center, to understand what a shared solution for pools could be. So please know that we are continuing to pursue those. I also want to offer, because I know sometimes when you see new construction, you want to see what it's going to look like. Where's the rendering? Where's the conceptual drawing? And we don't have that because we are committed to doing this in a very collaborative way, and we've not entered a design phase. That comes after we have a positive vote in our community and have those resources to do design. But we are committed to gathering user groups and appropriate community groups, parents and students, to really understand what those school designs need to look like and what those renovations at the individual classrooms or athletic areas need to be. So our next steps are to ensure that every community member has the factual information they need to make the best decision for them and their family and our community. And we are looking forward to absentee ballots being available on March 27th and the polls open on May 6th. Before we move into Q&A, I'd like to invite our president, board president, Phil Rausch, to offer a few closing words, and then we'll take questions.
Well, thank you, Penny. Thank you, Brian and Anna, for helping with the presentation. It was very informative. I just want to close with this. Myself and 6 other colleagues represent the Board of Education. We do not represent the Board of Construction or bonds. So why do we do bonds? Why does a school district enter into bonds? We in Midland Public have been extremely good stewards of the taxpayers' dollars when it comes to our general fund and our previous bond. The general fund itself is how we pay teachers, it's how we pay parapros, it's how we pay reading intervention specialists. And Brian talked about it earlier. If we have to dip into that general fund to pay for a roof, it means we have to make hard decisions about how much educational staff we can have in a building. So a bond helps us to make sure that we have relief on that general fund to pay for educational outcomes. This is about creating and continuing to build a district that is the top achieving district in the state. That's why we do bonds. That's why we are entering into this. It's about educational outcomes. When I think about educational outcomes and what this is going to accomplish, It's making sure that we can continue to pay for the staff that achieve these outcomes for students, achieve growth for students, and in particular, it will transform our district into one that makes sure that every single student in the community has the opportunity to go to high-quality preschool education. That's how we change third grade reading scores. That's how we change the trajectory for families. That's how we change outcomes for students. I'm really proud of the process that we went through over the course of 2 years. We had 2 years of community engagement, gathering input from experts to make sure we understood the situation that the district was in, and had an extremely collaborative process, probably with many of you in this room, either through surveys, focus groups, forums, just community conversations, all leading up to this. Penny talked about some of the hard decisions we had to make about cutting scope. But for about $1 a day, we can make sure that we not only continue to have a top 3% district in the state, but have the top performing district in the state. So with that, we'll open it up for questions and answers. And please remember, as always, we all have an email address as a board member. You can email the board as a whole. You can email Penny or any of her superintendent team. We are here to make sure that you have the facts and have access to all the information that you could want or have. And I should also mention that we have a very comprehensive website at midlandps.org. So, thank you.
All right, we're just going to move chairs over here so that we can all see one another. Phil, you're welcome to join us. I'll get you this mic. Maybe. There you go. And I believe our format is that Katie Geyer, our communications specialist, is going to ask the questions that have been received, and we'll tackle those according to area. Thank you. Yes, thank you, Sarah. Sarah will come and grab those from you, and you continue to use the QR code as well.
Okay, let's start with some context. What is going to happen to this beautiful building that we are in tonight?
I can take that one. There will be some upgrades to this building. The physical footprint won't change, but we'll get upgrades to the technology. I believe there are some acoustical panels that will be added. Just those upgrades that will really enhance the experience here, but the footprint itself won't be expanded.
Okay, we've got this question a couple different ways, so I'm just going to kind of surmise it. How can we justify building new elementary schools when there were some that were previously demolished that seem to be in good shape?
So I'll take that one and then ask anyone to jump in. You know, it's easy to sort of in hindsight judge what happened before. I can tell you, though, it is very clear that at the time that decision was made, which was a decision made by a collective group of community members who provided a recommendation to the board. At that time, our enrollment was declining rapidly, and our financial position was terrible. And that Board of Education had to make some really hard decisions about how to get us back in a financially viable position, to really right-size our district so that we could be efficient and effective moving forward. And many of those buildings were, based on assessment, also at end of life. And so those were really hard decisions, but honestly, it set us up to be where we are today, in a strong financial position, educating children very well. What would either or any of you add? Okay.
I would just, again, remind the public of how many students live north of the highway, right? We have 600 elementary students that live just north of US 10, and we have enough students north of 10 that we are larger than Meridian,
Yes.
larger than Coleman, and about the same size as Bullet Creek just north of US 10. So to make sure that they have access, our students north of 10 have access to an elementary school and it accomplishes these other goals of relieving the space constraints, making sure that our students with special needs have space, and put preschool programming and expand those opportunities. We're accomplishing a number of different goals in one solution.
Yeah, please, go ahead.
Sorry. I was going to say to also add to that, I think within there you said that these buildings seemingly looked fine. From the outside, most of our buildings do. Even when you look at Northeast or Carpenter, they do. Talking about the infrastructure within there, there's items that you just can't see driving by and looking at these buildings, and sometimes even walking through the hallways. So there are areas within there too that played into those roles that might not have been seen just looking at them.
Thanks for that, Anna. Not to belabor this, but I wanted to add, we recognize that that was a really hard time for our community, and some of those neighborhoods that lost schools, that was a tough moment, and we're sensitive to that. I know our friends up in Mills Township are still really struggle with that decision, and I'm gonna head up there here next week or the week after maybe and welcome those folks to have a conversation about that. We want you to know that we are sensitive to this particular aspect, that we're looking to build a new elementary in that area north of US 10. Thanks,
Okay,
Katie.
we did have a question about Mills Township. So Mills Township residents, do they pay into the millage for MPS?
Yes, they do. So any home that is within our school district boundaries is part of this proposal, and they are welcome to vote on May 6th.
Okay, I think this is a question to address overcrowding. Can we close in district or out of district school of choice?
Sure, I'll kick that one off, and then maybe, do you want to take it, Brian?
Can you? Yes. But one thing that we have prided ourselves on in Midland Public is allowing people to exercise in school of choice where it makes the most sense. This is my 12th year living within Midland, and it still to this day surprises me that when I walk through my subdivision, one house has a Midland High sign, and the next house has a Dow High sign, the next has Midland High. And coming from Metro Detroit area, it always caused me to scratch my head. That just didn't happen down there. Different people choose different pathways throughout the Midland Public Schools for different reasons. Sometimes it's about a band program. Sometimes it's about an athletic program. Sometimes it's about an athletic program. And there's miscellaneous reasons. And for us to want to restrict in-district school of choice, that is very difficult for us to do because we know that there are many strong connections and reasons why families may want to go to certain places. When we geocode our students onto a map, we can geocode them where a color shows where they should go, and I've joked often, and people make fun of this, but it looks like a bag of Skittles was dumped onto Midland Public Schools because people like to choose where they like to go. Sometimes it's because my family were chemics and always chemics, but I found my dream home on the Dow High side of town. We like to be able to allow people to choose within. External school of choice, there will be some difficult decisions that are going into play. We have a external school of choice window that will be opening up within about a month here, and there will be restrictions on external choice for some of the very first times in Midland Public Schools history. It is tough for us to be able to turn away learners that want to experience what is all the great things about Midland Public Schools, but at the same time, when Penny said we're full in the elementary, we're full. And we can't in good conscience put additional students that are outside of the Midland Public Schools into classrooms that we know are already stressed when it comes to class size. Please enhance that, Penny.
No, that's exactly how I would have answered it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so this question is about enrollment as well. The state projections indicate a decline. How is MPS predicting stable enrollment, and what is the projected student enrollment in the next 5 to 15 years?
Sure. We aren't enrollment experts. We contract with enrollment experts so that we have outside unbiased opinions to provide us with numbers in which to go off of. We have internal hypotheses, but it's always good to have outside experts give us their predictions. Their predictions are that we are going to be stable. We do acknowledge that birth rates amongst the state are declining, and they're also in our area not increasing as well too, but it's about the percentage of the birth rate that we here in Midland Public are capturing. We are capturing a higher percentage of the birth rate than we have historically in the past, which is leading to those stable predictions in enrollment. And the experts, and we've posted this on our website, you can go see the report there, actually project a slight increase over the next 5 to 10 years. Why are we being able to capture birth rates? It's because we've been able to provide enhanced programming. Before, there were not Young Fives programs within Midland Public Schools. Those students chose to go to Bullet Creek. We went from 0 to 3 this year, and perhaps 4 next year. We're still working on that, but we might expand that offering. From preschool programs, we went to 0 to now over 150 students. At the other end of it, if students weren't succeeding in a traditional pathway, they used to be able to go to alternative schools such as Windover, et cetera, outside of Midland Public. We've created other opportunities such as the PATH programs, et cetera, so that we're providing those opportunities. We're keeping Midland Public school students here, but also capturing a higher percentages of birth rate through our strategic programming that is leading to that stability and is, again, a point of pride, beating what the statistics tell us we should be doing.
I think I would just add too, Brian, that 2 things can be true.
Yeah.
The state can have declining enrollment, and Midland can be flat or growing.
Yep.
And
I've heard that
you know,
quote.
when we think about our community being larger than just the schools are a integral part of our community. And the first question that you get when somebody's looking to move to the area to take a job that has kids, what's the first question they ask? Where do I go to school? Where do my kids go to school? Right? And when we have assets that reflect the educational outcomes of our district and enhance the educational outcomes of our district, it's economic growth, it's community growth, and it's community vibrancy for us as a total community and not just as a school district.
If the bond proposal passes, when would it begin appearing on residents' property tax bills?
If this one were to pass, our City of Midland residents currently see a split between summer and winter taxes. They would first see that on the summer tax of this year. Our residents that live in townships that are not in the city would first see that on their winter taxes.
This is also a tax question. Do residents of affordable housing and apartment communities pay for the bond in addition to homeowners?
If you are not paying property taxes, you will not be paying the millage.
I think just to be fair and transparent about that question, though, it could come through in
That is true.
rent or something
Thank
like that,
you.
right?
Thank you. Yes. You would not, if you are not receiving a direct tax bill, you will not be directly paying the millage. However, yes, it could be reflected within your rent.
And then do you want to add on to that question for businesses as well? Businesses pay the millage, right?
That is
because
correct.
they pay
That's right.
property
Yes.
taxes,
Yep.
just to make sure we're covering all of our
Correct.
bases.
It is not something that is solely impacting homeowners.
This person is interested in hearing more about CTE. Why is CTE included, and what are some of the plans?
Well, this is my jam, so
Yeah,
let me take this.
I was gonna start, but I knew.
As a former CTE
Yeah.
teacher, this is an exciting opportunity for us. So I'm really proud that our Board of Education understands and embraces the idea that there are multiple pathways to success after high school. And one of those is engaging in CTE, even the pre-CTE programs that we offer in our middle school. So this is really an exciting opportunity to come back in, renovate those CTE programs, career and technical education. So this isn't just business and marketing or healthcare. This is welding, auto tech, building trades, our wood shop, and in our middle schools, bringing those shop classes back up to standards. We do have Project Lead the Way, which is a really robust STEM curriculum that has elements of CTE in it. So those programs and classrooms will get renovations, and we're going to kind of breathe some new life into those.
And I'm going to jump in here for just 30 seconds because I realized that when I was standing over here, I said I would talk a touch about Jefferson. So I'm going to touch back in on this one so I don't get a demerit later on. Know that we are not going to leave Jefferson alone. If we're going to build a brand new modern Northeast Middle School, there are a large amount of dollars to be able to provide additional spaces and renovate at Jefferson Middle School. There is a $1 per square foot to be able to add additional space to be able to provide these modern educational spaces, new lab spaces, new collaborative spaces. Right now it's calling for the current cafeteria to be turned over and built into learning spaces, and an additional cafeteria being built off the backside. So do know that Jefferson is not left out. Jefferson gets a very heavy lift as well in this bond as well too, to try and provide enhanced opportunities for Jefferson Middle School as well.
Okay, so we're talking about middle schools. This question is about middle schools as well. Future demographics do not support maintaining 2 middle schools. How does the bond address this?
Could you repeat that? Future demographics don't support?
This question says, future demographics do not support maintaining 2 middle schools. How does the bond address this?
I think we kind of answered that question, right? What about stable enrollment projections?
We are stable. And I think the size of our middle schools is a good fit for those years. Our middle schools, if you don't know, are grades 6, 7, and 8. And we have about 800 students per middle school. Ish. They're fairly comparable. Jefferson's a little bit fuller. You might have remembered that utilization chart at 103. But I think we are where we need to be. And although I said the design of the new middle school has not yet occurred, we do have intentions of designing that in a way that it can easily be expanded if needed. So again, if we are thinking absolute worst case scenario and many, 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 many years from now, we find ourselves in some situation, that building can be expanded if we did have to move to just one middle school.
So we talked about middle schools, we talked about elementary overcrowding. How does the bond address crowding in the high schools?
So, did you want to take that?
No,
I was just going to
go
go
ahead.
to the utilization slide, if I can get us back there. All right. So you can see our high school utilization rates. The one thing that I really want to make sure that our community understands as a point of openness and transparency is the new elementary school, when constructed with this affirmative vote from our community, will adjust our school boundaries. So when we take students, about 500 students from that Woodcrest, Siebert, Adams area and shift them, we will balance enrollment across our other elementaries by adjusting school boundaries. That will also impact those boundary lines for middle school and for high school. So that is one way that we will smooth utilization across, or enrollment, across those schools. Anyone have anything to add to that?
I believe this question is written together. This might be a 2-parter. Is there a plan B? And what about using empty buildings in Midland like Kmart?
I'm trying to get us back to the QR code. I'm so sorry. Using community facilities. I'm so sorry. I was focused on that. I apologize.
I could take the second
Okay,
part if
thank
you
you.
take the first part. So the first part's the harder part of the question, so I'll take the second part. Utilizing community facilities. Penny had said something at the end of the presentation that we have been exploring potential facilities amongst the community for our robotics teams. We have visited every applicable warehouse, available space. Over the course of the past 6 months within Midland, we've been working with the realty company, again, looking for enhanced robotic space. And we have been in the old Kmart, we've been in the old Office Max, we've been in the old, well, I call it Farmer Jack, but everyone tells me it was the Huntington Center, et cetera, and there as well too. And each of those, what's the real name of it?
It was the A&P.
Okay, thank you, sorry. Again, Metro Detroit, Farmer Jack, if you've been down there, you know. And those facilities each came with different challenges. They have roof issues, they have infrastructure issues. Some of them are for lease and not for sale, et cetera. So in terms of available space within the community, we don't believe that there is one. Again, for robotics, we're close to coming to a conclusion, and we think we may have found the right space for that, but that for us was finding a diamond in the rough. The hard part of the question, Penny, is if this bond isn't successful, is there a plan B?
Yeah, our plan B is to regroup, to collect information from our community and to grapple with that, again, as a Board of Education and administration team, and decide how to come back to our community with a new plan. The truth is that our needs don't go away, and costs just continue to increase. So we are at what we believe is the best moment in time for the proposal that we're offering. And again, our needs are here, and we believe these are the best solutions. I want to pause just for a moment. It is 6 minutes after 7. The invitation to our community session said 6 to 7. So we respect if any of you need to leave, please feel welcome. We won't deem you as being rude or walking out. We'll keep answering questions, but know that you're welcome to go at any time. And if you do, thanks for being here. I just want to remind everyone that our website has lots of information, including a really robust FAQ. All of us are available for questions via email. Please reach out if you have questions. Next one, Katie.
Sure. So this one was asked again a couple different ways, so I'm going to kind of summarize here. In the current economic climate, or with many in our community on fixed incomes, why did we ask for the $285 million, and why not a smaller number?
I can take that one because I think it weighed on the school board pretty heavily. I completely appreciate the question, and it's one that I think we frankly grappled with. I think there are, one example of what Penny talked about are 3 opportunities that we're addressing to meet critical needs outside of the bond. The aquatics, the robotics, and then theater. And looking for community partners so that we optimize the facilities that are already in our district and in our community and approach that in a different way. To go directly at the question, we're asking residents that may be on a fixed income for their contribution to our district. I'm really passionate about public education because it's the lifeblood of our community, and it is an amazing opportunity for students in our district. There is no other funding mechanism that the state allows for when it comes to paying for facilities. We can do one of 2 things. Somehow in our budget, which is about 85% salaries and benefits for teachers and student instruction, take away from that to pay for capital, or we can pass a bond. And one of the ways that a bond is constructed is it's based on the property value of that homeowner, and that is the tool set that we have. We tried to make sure that this budget addressed needs and not wants, and had to make some hard decisions along the way. And I think we've arrived at what is a reasonable proposal for our district. You could see the numbers that Anna put up. It's about $1 a day for the median homeowner, and less as the home value goes down.
What precipitated the start of the pre-K initiative? Were parents asking for it, or did the state require school districts to provide this?
There is not a requirement yet for universal preschool. It is both a community endeavor as well as us as educators recognizing that high-quality preschool experiences provide students with the best foundation for success moving into elementary school, and to Phil's point, when they reach 3rd grade, to ensure that they have the appropriate literacy skills. Childcare and preschool are a topic in our community. The Community Success Panel, which is a group of community leaders, is engaging in conversations about childcare and preschool, and there are other entities across our community who are really working hard to ensure that our families have their needs met for those earliest years, and we want to be part of that solution.
This is an interesting question. I'm interested to hear the answer to this. What will happen to historic parts of the buildings, such as the mural at Northeast?
That's a great question, and there are some really lovely elements that have been community generated or student generated over time, and we will do our very best to preserve those. You know, the slide that Brian talked about with those 2 schools that will come offline, we are very sensitive to the fact that we, as humans, have heartstring attachments to our youth and our school experiences. So we will engage in that process with all the sensitivity and collaboration necessary. And if there are elements of those buildings that we need to identify a way to carry that piece of the legacy forward, we will. For example, we know that Northeast Middle School is an Alden B. Dow design, and we have already had some conversations with the Home and Studio about what that means and how we can honor that legacy and do right by them moving forward.
Okay, this person has a question about modern methods. We mentioned modernizing educational spaces. Can you talk a little bit more about what that means and how that has an impact on things like math and reading proficiency?
I've talked a lot. Does anyone want to take that?
I'm happy to start it, but you're
Okay.
gonna jump in as well too. Modernizing spaces is a contextual definition, but it starts with furniture. And furniture, again, this is always hard for me to put out there areas where I think aren't sources of pride for us right now. Our furniture in our secondary buildings is not a source of pride for Midland Public Schools. When you walk in and I see tennis balls on the bottom of these, and I see our trades folks welding these back together and putting them back together, that's not a source of pride for us. Modern furniture, you do not walk into a modern office building and see an old desk that folks like me with a bit of a gut kind of have to suck into and go. That's not, right? It's not comfortable. It's not, kids move, they have to fidget a touch, and it allows the classroom instruction to be able to shape to what the teacher is trying to accomplish. You may have remembered back in the day when the teacher said, okay, get into groups, and it was, and you're moving the tables around and everything is, and then the desks get in this weird shape. If you've seen what's at Central Park, and you see the ability for teachers, our teachers at Central Park with the modern furniture actually were trained on the multiple ways that the furniture could enhance their instruction. It can get into circles. There's convex and concave settings that they can put into different patterns where it can be groups of 3, or it can be a circle, or it can be individualized if you need to be. Allowing a teacher to be able to mold the structure of the classroom can enhance their ability to work in small groups when it's effective, and allow them to work solo when that's effective as well too. But in addition, you all know that we also use technology to enhance our student experiences as well too. Enhancing that technology also means having the ability to charge Chromebooks. I am the parent of teenagers, and I can't tell you how many fights I've had with my teenagers about charge and plug in your Chromebook, and guess what? They just don't do it. And right now, the kids have to go to the power can't come to them. Modern educational spaces have that type of infrastructure where we can charge, not just in the classroom, but also in cafeterias as well too. CTE spaces, Penny, I know that's your passion, and going into how those can change as well too. But modernizing the technology, upgrading the furniture, and also us improving the aesthetic experience. There is something to removing the accordion walls and the acoustics and that experience as well too. It's just not what we know is optimal. Enhance, please.
Yeah, I will, and whoever asked that question, I'm happy to stay after, because I, as a former curriculum director, I have a lot of passion and energy for this topic. To Brian's point, the brain science that has emerged even in the last decade really informs us about what that learning experience needs to look like. It is no longer a teacher-centered experience, it's a student-centered experience. So to Brian's point, having these classrooms that are flexible, mobile furniture, grouping and regrouping so that students can talk and make meaning of their learning, that is how learning happens, through dialogue, through relationships, in the context of the learning day. I'll also say there is considerable research about the quality of the environment, appropriate light, appropriate airflow, all of those things actually impact learning. And let's just face the reality, I'm sure you've read this, young people today are having more moments of unwell-being, right? They have more anxiety, more depression, and when you can create the kind of learning environments where they can be regulated, your brain can't learn academics if you aren't emotionally regulated. So having the kind of learning environment where students can be calm, They can be regulated, allows them to be ready to access the academic learning and for us to press them in that academic space. So again, probably way more than whoever asked the question wanted to know, but I'm happy to stay after and talk about that link between social emotional well-being and readiness for academic press.
There are a couple anecdotes to throw on here as well, too.
We just love this.
I know, I'm just gonna,
More
so,
teachers.
the anecdotes, so when my teenagers come home, they don't go find the most rigid chair in the house and sit in it. They find the most comfortable space that they possibly can to get themselves to cozy up to read, and they get their Chromebook and they plug it into the wall, and that's how it is they learn. And the other anecdote, and I saw this on a slide somewhere, so I will not take credit for it, but in any sort of modern meeting that you all in the business world go to, when you go into that meeting room, are you sitting in a traditional, horizontal, vertical, single seats, all facing the same? That's not, it doesn't exist. That's not how people operate after the world of education. It's about collaboration and spacing and group and flexibility, and we are trying to prepare students to be able to thrive within that world and get them used to that type of environment. Phil, if that's how Hemlock is, I'm sorry, but I have not seen where someone comes into a room and it's set up like a classroom from 1980. I'm sorry, I took more time.
All good. Next
Okay,
question,
all right.
Katie, 'cause we'll keep
Sure,
on
so
that
this
one.
is an election-related question. Is it true this special election will cost about $85,000, and would it have been free if done during a regular election?
So it is true that this is a special election, and when you are the only item on the ballot as a school district, that we do pay for that. That estimate is close. We don't know until we get actual cost from each of those townships where the elections are held. Honestly, I know this question may come up, why May? And the truth is that we shared with you our needs today. Those needs are real. And the next possible time, once the board made a decision about this bond program and how we wanted to improve our facilities and the experience for students, the next available opportunity to get on a ballot was May.
Okay, Sarah is checking the Google form right now, but if there's nothing else, this is our last question. I'm excited about the updated athletics, especially the stadium. I know we talked about this a little bit, but are there some other planned things for stadium upgrades as well as at both high schools we didn't cover?
You want to take that?
Penny's staring at me. I'm happy to stay after and talk a little bit more about this, and I know that restrooms don't get exciting at certain points, but if you caught what I was saying earlier about expanding restrooms and concessions area, and those of you that know the stadium, if we are going to meet modern code with the restroom and concession experience, and we're going to expand from 8 to 10 stalls to dozens and dozens and dozens, it doesn't fit in the footprint of the west side of the stadium. You know that it's bookended to the street right there. So to get a little bit deeper, the plans would be to move that experience to the east side of the stadium, which would include a new restroom facility, which would include a new concessions facility, and we also believe some enhancement for our band members and students as well too. And so there's some pretty exciting things that can happen along with that, and upgrades that we believe will be really kind of the final touch for making that one of the premier facilities. The bleachers are great, the press box is great, but in terms of the visitor and the player experience, they deserve modern restrooms, modern team rooms, and we also would like to highlight our band members a little bit more as well too. It always has seemed odd to me that the band plays away from the crowd. My daughter was in the band at Midland High, and I remember sitting next to them and going, I can't hear them even though they're right there. Why don't they play two across so we can see them and enhance that experience as well too? So that's some of the exciting things that are planned for the stadium. There's more, but that's kind of in the weeds, and we could chat with people on that after.
I'll share with you all. If you go to the website, which you can do from your phone or your computer, and you go to the facility improvement bond proposal link, if you scroll down, you will see project lists for each of our schools. And that offers a more detailed list about the work that will happen at each school. So the second part of that question was a little more about some of the athletic enhancements, and Brian mentioned those in the presentation.
Yeah.
Behind Dow High, baseball and softball fields at both of our high schools, locker rooms at
Yep.
both of the high schools. Middle schools will both
renovations,
have their
yep.
tracks and outdoor facilities upgraded. So please feel welcome to visit that part of our website.
Okay, this is a multi-parter, and it is about finances. If approved, how long will the millage last? Does it expire? And does the existing 2.9 mils ever expire? Will we permanently be at the 6.2 mil level if this bond is approved?
All right.
Go for
I'm
it
up.
and we'll tag in.
So the first part of that was how long, correct?
Yep.
So that is a bit of a complicated answer. You saw up earlier that we are proposing of selling within 4 series. The length of how long this would be partially dependent on series. While that is our plan, it could change within there of how they are sold, and the time that it would be dependent on that. In general, we're probably looking at that 30 to 35 year mark, but again, that could change depending on how those series are sold.
And that's because, just to make sure that we're talking about this in the right way, that's because each series would take 20 years, and because you're not issuing the 3rd and 4th series for quite a bit of time, that's what's pushing out the length.
That's right.
Okay.
Yep.
The current bond, when does it expire?
The current bond.
Yeah.
Right now, it is set to expire in 2038.
Yep.
Yes.
There was other parts, I don't remember.
It says, if approved, will the millage rate permanently be at 6.2?
Will that, for doing the 2025 bond, will it? No, the 2025 bond does not keep it permanently at 6.2.
This is also a finance question.
Well, let's make sure that I'm hearing some discussion out in the crowd, but it's just like paying down the principal on your mortgage, right? So as that 2015, the spending is 99% complete on the
That's
2015.
correct. We have a little bit left to go. Yep.
So we've issued our 3rd series in the 2015 bond 3 years ago, I want to say.
That's about right, Phil.
About right. And that one was primarily targeted at buses and technology.
That's exactly correct.
Series 1 and 2 within the 2015 bond did most of the physical upgrades, capital upgrades to the buildings to kind of steady the ship.
Yep.
And now what we're talking about with the 2025 proposal would be 4 different series that would each have their own scope of work, and then those are same way, just like a mortgage on a house. Higher interest at first, and then you're paying down the principal of the bond.
That's right.
As a community.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this question is about finances as well. Have the philanthropic foundations that we have in the community been approached about any portion of this work?
They have not. This right now is a facilities improvement bond proposal to our community. We certainly have informed our community leaders, including those philanthropic foundations, who care a lot about our community and want to see our community thrive. So they're aware of what's happening, but there has been no direct ask in relation to this.
But I would add on to that, those foundations, we approve donations at almost every, I shouldn't say almost, it is every single board meeting. We have amazing community partners that are helping with the operations of the district, whether through some capital donations or helping with teams and robotics and field trips, and those are published in our minutes every board meeting, and we talk about them. So I do want to make sure that we acknowledge how much those foundations have helped.
Oh, absolutely.
And then too, with our local businesses and corporate community members, they are taxed as part of this millage as well. So they will actually be probably the largest plurality of taxpayer contributions.
How often can a bond be requested, and can you talk a little bit about the timing in terms of asking for this large sum of money now that a lot of the facilities need upgraded?
Do you want to take the first part?
Of how often?
I don't think there's a restriction on
I
how
don't believe
often
so
that you
either.
can. But correct me, team, when I misspeak here. It is every 10 to 15 years you should do a facility study, and that study can reveal many things. Again, when the board was facing difficult decisions 20, 30 years ago, the landscape was very different than it is now. And the landscape of Midland Public in another 10 to 15 years, there will be another board and probably some different faces on this stage as well too, that will be reanalyzing at that time. That doesn't mean automatically that you're gonna do something at the time. It's just based on what the landscape and what the current needs are at that time. So it's a cycle of analysis that probably should happen every 10 to 15 years. And if you look at how it was the past, the previous initiative was starting to study in 2013, passed in 2015, and here we are about 10-ish years later on a different cycle.
Okay, will you be utilizing local contractors for the construction?
It's a great question. We are required to use a process as part, well, it's both part of our responsibility per our board policy. So those will go out to anyone who wants to competitively bid for those. Of course, we love it when we can get local contractors, and I know from the 2015 bond, we had the vast majority of folks working on those projects were local within, I think, a 60-mile radius defined by local. So while that would be our desire, we have to use the process defined to us, which is competitive bidding.
Can we talk a little bit more about how what we've discussed tonight impacts academic excellence?
Yeah, I think Brian and I touched on that a little bit when we talked about these enhancements to the learning environments and to classrooms. There is a direct connection between that vibrancy of a learning environment, the appropriateness of the learning environment, the way it supports the pedagogical or teaching practices that does connect to student learning. Again, brain science has emerged a lot in the last 10 years, and we know a lot more about how students learn, both in their youngest years as well as when they move into the older years, into high school. And that is what we are looking to do, is design those classrooms and learning environments to be the healthiest they can. Again, natural light where possible, or appropriate light, appropriate moisture control and ventilation for clean air, the kind of furniture that can be mobile and flexible, and those supplemental learning spaces that really enhance learning. You know, when students can be fully engaged in the school experience, that means that they are meaningfully engaged in a club, a sport, band, music, theater. It supports their overall well-being, which really does support their overall academic achievement. And I think our board has been pretty clear in their commitment to academics as our priority, but knowing that career and tech ed, music, art, theater, athletics, clubs are all part of this really important experience that helps students accelerate. Phil, I feel like you want to say something here, because I know you have a lot of passion about this too.
In our practices as a board, one of the things that we often do, and we do it, I think, every February, is look at our student data. Where are our students growing? Where are they succeeding? Where are they achieving what we expect? And then we also talk about where we have gaps, right? How do we make this district even better? How do we make sure that we individualize the learning opportunities for our individual learner? When we do that, when we right now today have opportunities to improve third grade reading scores. Third grade is the point at which students flip from learning to read and they go to read to learn. One of the things that we're addressing, and Penny put it up here as the first thing with the first bond, is to build a new elementary school to address space so that we can make sure that we have the appropriate student to teacher ratios, so that we can add pre-K programming, and we make sure that we have the appropriate space for our students with disabilities. That's how we change outcomes for students. That's how we change the trajectory of families. That's how we make sure that by the time those students get to 11th, 12th grade, we're not just testing at a top 3% SAT. We are making sure that we're testing at the top 1%. Our students have a ton of CTE opportunities. If they want to go that route, they can enter the business world if they want to go that route right away. And we're addressing outcomes with the facility improvements that we have.
One final add-on to that. Phil made a great point. It is incredibly frustrating. One of the job duties that I have every single year is assigning classrooms from the ESA, et cetera, and it's incredibly frustrating to look at a building, look at class sizes, and know that with our healthy general fund, we could add teachers, but we don't have the space in which to be able to do it. We know that there is research that supports those ratios, and it's frustrating not to be able to have the space. And I want to steal something from Phil from earlier as well too. It allows the general fund to impact kids and not to be spent on capital improvements. And I spent 4 years in Anna's chair, and every time that something in Midland Public Schools broke, it continued to make me gasp. You all may know we had some issues with the Dow High boilers a couple of years back. That project was a $900,000 project. That scope, it was almost $1 million that the repair bill was. That's $1 million that we could have put into reading interventions and teachers, et cetera, et cetera. Our annual repair budget, our capital improvement budget, is around $2 million a year in Midland Public. That's just general maintenance. We have a large scope, a large fleet of buildings, and those $2 million, if we could think of the good academically that we can do with taking the general fund resources, putting them into the classroom to impact kids directly, and allow a bond program to be able to take care of infrastructure needs, and allow us to make the decisions that we know can positively impact kids as well too.
That's a great addition. What else?
So I think this is our final question that hasn't already been asked in some form or fashion. Last night, Governor Whitmer gave her the state address, and she did talk about public education. She made a comment about more money across the state in education per pupil has gotten Michigan to the bottom 10%. How does that affect our district's mission going forward?
I'm not sure I heard the middle part of your question.
So Governor Whitmer gave a quote that says more money across the state for education has only gotten Michigan to the bottom 10%. How does that affect the direction of our district going forward?
Well, I apologize, I did not watch the state address last night. We were engaged in other things related to work. I'm assuming that she's trying to use that as an urge for us to keep achieving or keep moving toward increasing student proficiency, learning and growth. And I guess I'll answer that by saying that's exactly what we're trying to do here. I think we have been really good stewards of the money entrusted to us, ensuring that to the extent possible, it's going directly to students in classrooms, ensuring that our teachers are taken care of. You know, the teacher is the #1 determinant factor in teaching and learning, and ensuring that teachers have that kind of learning environment or teaching environment they need is part of what we're doing here. And I know I'm getting a little off topic, but let me just say we often talk about what's best for kids, and we all wholeheartedly believe that. But we are also one of the largest employers here in the city of Midland and in our greater Midland community. And there is a responsibility for us to ensure that our staff have the best conditions to do their best work. And so we didn't really talk about that, but all of these enhancements also allow our team members to really shine and to use all of their skills and knowledge in the best way. So I really got off track there. I guess I'm not really sure how to answer that because I don't think it changes our vision or our mission here. We are still committed to pursuing academic excellence and excellence in all the things that our students do, academics, arts, music, CTE, etc., and continuing our commitment to doing that in the most efficient, financially efficient way possible. Are any of you interpreting that question differently? And
I gotta go back and watch. We were,
yeah.
Yep, we had other engagements last night. Yeah.
Okay, and whoever asked that question, I'm happy to stay
Yeah.
after if you had a kind of a different take on
Haven't
that.
seen it.
Sure, we did have one late addition that I don't think we really addressed. When did the growth trend start pointing to the north? How recently?
A little bit every year.
Yeah, I'm not sure I know when it started.
No.
I don't know. A lot of us,
It's about the landlocked
That is
south, right?
exactly
And
it.
that's
I
what you
mean,
do.
And that's a really good point.
Right.
You know, when we show that utilization slide and you can see the difference, particularly middle school and high school, where it's more apparent. When I was sharing this information with those school staffs, I was quick to say, please don't interpret that families are choosing not to go to Northeast and Midland High. It is a land, it's a geographic issue.
Yep.
When families come to Midland or they want to build a new home, there really isn't a lot of available land and property in those areas that are zoned to Northeast and Midland High. So families are going north of town
That's where the new construction is.
to buy land where they can do new construction, and those happen to be zoned to Jefferson and Dow High. I'm not quite sure when that trend started, and if you ask that question, please check in with me and we can do a little fact finding and see if we can get you a more precise answer.
There is one additional one. I'm just going to read this, it is a lengthy one. You compared Midland to many other communities, such as Rockford, which is in Kent County, and Traverse City. Has the school board worked with local corporations and the NBA to discuss jobs and new businesses coming to our area? The communities you mentioned are much more robust and growing rapidly, while Midland is growing very modestly.
So I'll start, and then maybe Phil might have something to add to that. Interestingly, this morning I was just at a community meeting, and they showed this sort of cycle of thriving, and how when you, and I'm not going to encapsulate it perfectly, but essentially when you have really healthy communities that people want to live and work in, then there's investment that happens, and the cycle just perpetuates where your community really thrives. And I believe that has been part of our board's perspective. It certainly is part of our administration's perspective, that when you have vibrant, successful, amazing schools, that is part of the backbone of your community, and that allows your community to thrive. It allows your property values to be maintained. It attracts people, talent, and people who want to live and work here, and that cycle sort of perpetuates in a really positive way. You know, there have been a couple questions now about local businesses or philanthropic organizations, and as part of our initial community input gathering, we surveyed everyone, we did the focus groups, we also talked with our community leaders, major employers, and those philanthropic partners, and they all reminded us of that particular fact, that schools and healthcare are the two things that families look for when they're seeking a new community in which to live, and that our ability to maintain our academic excellence is quite remarkable given the status of our facilities, but that when folks are coming here and those agencies or businesses are trying to wow them and recruit them, and they see our schools, they are underwhelmed. And so essentially, those folks are saying to us, we want your facilities to be awesome. We want those facilities to match the academic excellence you have. So that was a very long-winded way of saying I do believe that that feeds that full cycle so that our community can stay vibrant and really thrive. Phil, would you have anything to add?
I think the flywheel analogy is a perfect one.
Yeah.
It is what, as someone who works at a business that is in a growth cycle right now, the number one question, the very first question that my wife and I get when somebody new comes to town is, where do I live? How are the schools? Where they live is based on the school. They choose the school district first, then they find a house. That's an amazing thing. And tons of times, people are choosing to live in Midland. And by the way, if we can attract a few more people, we get to spread that millage cost out, and we all pay a little bit less. So it's a good thing. We are capped at the amount of money that we are allowed to spend. It is $285 million, and then the millage rate adjusts as you get more homes or less homes, but hopefully more homes. And it is a flywheel. When we have good schools, our community thrives. Our community thrives because we have good schools. I think in tonight's presentation, hopefully what you took away is we are addressing critical needs for our students so that we can continue to change the learning outcomes for those students.
Yeah, I'll just add to kind of on a peripheral. We want our graduates, our high school graduates, to come back. If they choose to go off to post-secondary education, we want them to come back and live here. And again, that's part of this thriving community. We want them to have a great experience as a student, and then come back and have a family here and continue to help us grow. I know there are some initiatives in the Great Lakes Bay region to grow by a certain number of community members, and we want to be part of the reason that people choose to be in the Great Lakes Bay region, and more specifically here in Midland. I have a daughter who's away at college. I want nothing more than for her to graduate, come home, and choose to raise her family here, and maybe someday expand her family, and so those grandbabies are here. And I'm sure that's what many of you want, is for your children and grandchildren to be here in our community.
There is nothing better than the fact that my dad picked up the grandkids from school today. So, and they walked home all together, and
That's great.
it's awesome when you have multiple generations in town.
That is all we have question-wise.
Thanks so much, Katie and Sarah, and just a quick thanks to the crew in the back who is here to help with the technical aspects. So again, I'll just remind you that there is an immense amount of information on our website. We are all available. We'll stay after a few minutes if you have any additional questions, and we welcome emails and other ways of communication. Thank you for choosing to be here, and as Scott said, choosing to be informed so that you have the facts to share across your networks. Have a great night.